This is Research Like a Pro, episode 118, Revisiting Research Logs. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the creators of the Amazon best-selling book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist's Guide. I'm Nicole, co-host of the podcast. Join Diana and me as we discuss how to stay organized, make progress in our research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Nicole Dyer, and I'm here with Diana Elder, my mother, and accredited genealogist. Hi, Diana. How are you?
I'm good, Nicole. Glad to be here today.
What have you been working on?
I've been working on DNA, just continuing with the DNA practicum, trying to solve difficult cases and then write them up. It's been really interesting with this last case. I always say that it's in the writing things up that things come together, and that was especially true in this one. I had all these different pieces of DNA evidence and documentary evidence, and it's really satisfying to bring it all together into a written summary or a report and get your thoughts in order. You know, you have all these hypotheses and these ideas floating around, but when you have to put them into words, it really makes a difference. So that's what I've been working on this last few days.
Yeah, I've been working on a timeline and trying to separate a bunch of men of the same name. And I've had that same feeling too, like this isn't going to feel sorted out completely until I write a conclusion.
And I think that's why this makes a difference, doing the whole process and ending with something written, because otherwise you can feel like your research is so scattered and that you never ever come to a conclusion, because you don't. Unless you write it, you can't come to some kind of a conclusion.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, our spotlight today is from the genealogy at Nears, and the title is Amazing Podcast. And he said, this podcast helped me a lot with my brick walls and how to do the research where you don't have random papers everywhere. Question. Currently, I am working on a merge on Family Search Family Tree, and the other person has tons of people working on the ancestor but has no sources. Who do I talk to, or what should I do? Thank you for this amazing podcast. So, thank you for the review. That's really nice of you. And as to your question about the Family Search Tree and doing merges, you can try to contact the people who've added the information about the other person, and I would do that. But in case they don't respond, what I usually do for merges is I review each piece of information about the two people that you are considering merging, and then note any differences between them and try to find sources for that person with no sources attached. So if there are no differences and there's no sources attached, then you might be okay to merge them. But if there are differences, like a different spouse, different child, different dates, places, pay specific attention to the places, because sometimes people might have the same dates, like if they're just a general year, but the places are different. So if there is something different and you're not able to tell if it's the same person or not for sure, then don't merge yet. Just keep researching and kind of keep track in your research notes and a research log of what you find. And then hopefully you can build a profile for each person. And if it turns out that they have all the same information and there's just some conflicting dates of birth, then you can go ahead and merge them. But if they did live in different places and have different relationships, then hopefully you'll be able to tell that they're different people. So good luck on your merge.
Yeah, that's a challenge. And I love everything that you said, Nicole, especially about if you're not sure, just to keep researching till it becomes really clear, because it is a big deal to merge people, and we don't want to merge identities. We've all seen that happen way too often. So really good to get the research down first. Well, let's get to our subject of the day, which is revisiting research logs. And in our original podcast, Research Like a Pro number 8, we talked all about research logs, and we talked about the different kinds that you maybe have used in the past or have heard about, like paper research logs, electronic research logs, or the online program Research Ties. But today we're going to focus in on electronic research logs, because that is what we are using. And we teach that to everyone because, let's face it, we are in a digital age, and even though there is a place for paper occasionally, going into an archive or such, The majority of our work is usually done at our computer, and with an electronic research log, we can just keep track of everything that we're looking at and all of our notes. So, we also introduced a fun new way to keep research logs in episode 88, where we talked about DNA research logs and we introduced Airtable. Honestly, now I love Airtable and I am starting to use that for, of course, all my DNA projects, but also when I have a complicated research project in traditional research, such as if I'm researching the fan club and I'm keeping track of a lot of data, then Airtable is proving to be very, very helpful. Airtable is very similar to Excel or to Google Sheet. It is a spreadsheet, but it has a little bit more capability to link between the tables within that spreadsheet. So it becomes more of a database. And if you're interested in learning about that, you can listen to that episode 88 and experiment a little bit with it. Now, some people do like to use a Word document or a Google Doc and do research notes instead of a research log. And they would put all their log searches into a table or just having paragraphs for each search that was made. And if that works for you, that is great. Or if you want to explore something like that, I highly encourage to try that. A lot of times people want us to tell them exactly how to do something. And, you've all heard me say it before, you need to do what works with your brain because we look at things a little bit differently. So I highly encourage everyone to try out a few different ways of doing a research log to see what you like the best. Because you might decide that doing freeform or a table in a Word doc works great for you, or you may just think, okay, I got to use a spreadsheet. So here's the reason we like using spreadsheets. I love to be able to sort the columns. That's huge because I am often entering in a bunch of different data and I have a column for the date of the event. And when I sort by that column, then my research log becomes this little timeline. It's fabulous. All the records, regardless of what date they took place on, can be automatically sorted. Or if I want to sort by just all the probate searches I've done, or all the land records, or maybe all the records in a specific locality, it makes it so easy to do that. So that sorting function is huge as I'm trying to look at my research and make sense of everything. In Airtable, you can group different types of searches together, and that's a really, really nice function. So, for instance, in a DNA project, you are often researching the trees of people that are your DNA matches. And you don't necessarily want to have an entire research log for each tree, right? That would be so many. So, in Airtable, you can put all that research in a single log and then you can group and you will be able to see all the research you have done for that specific DNA match. And it's really a slick way to keep it organized and not have it be overwhelming with the amount of data. So I highly recommend using an electronic research log and really considering exploring Airtable as something to get you even more organized with your DNA and your complicated research like the fan club.
Absolutely. And even if you don't use Airtable, hopefully you'll use Excel or Google spreadsheet so that you can at least sort your columns. So, why should you keep a research log? Well, this is one of the main habits that separates the hobbyist genealogist from the professional or serious genealogist. We've noticed that when we started using research logs, that's when we really started making a lot more progress with our difficult cases. So, if you want to do a professional level research, you have to keep track of your research that you're doing. And like we said, you can do this in a spreadsheet or you can also do it in a Word style document in research notes. Either way, the key principle is that you keep track of the sources that you consulted. Another part of that is creating a citation the first time you look at a source and save the information to get back to that source again. And then also abstract or transcribe the information that you find in the source and analyze the details that you're finding in your research log or notes so that you can figure out what to do next and you can make connections between sources. So, another reason to do your research log is it keeps you from redoing previous research. And we all know how important that is. We don't want to redo things we've already done. Another thing is that your research log helps you notice patterns and clues. It helps you get down all the notes from the record in the same place so that you can see everything all at once. It also helps you to keep track of your negative results, and sometimes these negative search results can lead to negative evidence in your report. So you can use what you didn't find where things might have been expected to be found to come to some kind of conclusion. Another thing that is great about a research log is when you take a break from your research for a while, maybe a week or a month or something, and then you need to come back and continue the research, it helps to be able to quickly review what you have already found by just reviewing your log. Have you ever had the experience where you started a research log, but then you didn't really continue with it? And then you come back to it later and you're disappointed to see that it only has one or two items in it? So, this has happened to me before. And it is disappointing because you know you did research, but you just didn't keep track of it. So, don't do that. Make sure you keep track of what you find and save that research to help your future self to have more success.
I like the reference to your future self because we all realize that we do this research, we get really excited about a project, and then life happens and we don't get back to something for weeks or days or months or years. And how great to have that research recorded so you're not starting from square one. Well, let's go through the different elements of a research log, and we're going to use our example that we're using in this series of my Nancy Briscoe project. And I talked last time about doing source citations for her pension application and for county histories. So I thought this time I would talk a little bit about how I log county history information. Because as we're going through a county history, we are looking for information specifically on our ancestor if possible, but then also anything that will give us more context about their life. And often that's on different pages and it's scattered throughout the book. And we want to take note of all of those things because how often has this scenario happened to you? You're thumbing through a book and you're noticing all this great information, or you're looking at a digitized book online, but you don't record that anywhere. And then later on you think, oh yeah, where was that? And that's a waste of time. So I'm going to show you how you can take research using county history as an example and record it so that you have got that information right at your fingertips. So the objective for this research project, I will just repeat it so that you remember what we're doing. The objective for this project is to discover more about the life of Nancy E. Briscoe, born 7 February 1847 in Benton County, Arkansas. Nancy married Richard Frazier about 1865 in Missouri and died 30 January 1924 in Love County, Oklahoma. So I did narrow my focus to being the years that Nancy would have been a young woman. And so one of my things on my research plan was to search county histories, and I found this fabulous county history that was digitized, which is even better. So let's go through how I logged this. I actually have 3 different entries from this county history with 3 different pieces of information. So first of all, I put the date I searched it. So my research log has that objective at the top, so I don't forget what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I have a column for the date, and that's helpful because we forget what day we're doing when we did this research. We forget the year we did this research, and so it's very helpful to know when we did it because we may want to go back to that website or we may want to go check that database again in case maybe something new has been added in the year since we checked it last. So I always put the date, and then I have the repository, and in this case it was on Family Search. It was a digitized book. If it's a repository that you visited and you're recording old research, then you would put down, the county courthouse of whatever county or a historical society or an archive. You would put that information, and you could make a note that you now have it in your own research file if you want. This is for you. This is not something that you're going to be giving to anyone unless they request it, but it's for you to know where things are and where things came from. So I put Family Search, and then there's a column for the URL or a call number or microfilm number. And generally, because we're researching a lot online, that will be the URL. And I really like having my URL in my research log so that I can quickly get to a record again. I don't want to go look on my family search family tree or my ancestry tree and try to find that record that's attached to a person. If it's in my log, then it's super easy to find it. And if it's a collection that was negative, then I can quickly go back to that and check details. Then I have a column for what I'm searching for, and this is where you can put in the type of record. Are you searching for probate? Are you searching for land, for tax, for the 1850 census, what have you? And so in mine, I just put in, I was searching for a county history of McDonald County from about 1860 to 1875. That was my sweet spot there of research. And the entry that I found was for 1861. And so I put in the specific date. So let's say I am looking for burial information for a person. I find they died and were buried in 1902. I would put that date in there. I would put in whatever date the event happened. And if you are having a negative search, let's say you cannot find your person on the 1870 census, which is common if you're working in the South, you can put 1870. You are searching for that year, and even though it's a negative search, that is the specific year you were searching for. And that will help you to locate that in your log and think, okay, I did search this thoroughly. So after the date of the event, then I like to put the locality. And there's a couple different ways of doing locality. You can do the state first and then the county and then the city, or you can do the traditional city, county, state. The reason why you might want to start with the state is if you sort by that column, then you'll have all the Arkansas records come up together and all the Missouri records come together. So that is something to play with and think about if you are wanting to sort by locality. Then we have the source citation. For this source citation, I have the complete title of the book. It was McDonald and Newton County sections of Godspeed's Newton, Lawrence, Berry, and McDonald Counties history. And then I have the publication information. It's a layered citation because it is digitized, so I have the digital information on Family Search. So as I was looking at the book, I created the citation, and it's in that source citation column. And then I have extracted pertinent information to my research case. So I wrote in my results and comments column that this was a list of taxpayers in 1861 for McDonald County, and it gives the township and range, and if they were Confederate, it was marked with a C. And there was R.T. Frazier, T21 range 30. So township 21 range 30, and there's no C. So I thought that was really interesting. It said the list was taken for the purposes of the Confederacy and the noting of whether in the Confederate Army or not, based on the recollections of Abraham Pierce and others. So these county histories, you never know what you're going to find. Now, R.T. Frazier could be an ancestor of Nancy Briscoe's husband, Richard Frazier. It could be him, or it could be one of his brothers or uncles. There were a lot of family members in this area. And I thought it was really interesting that he was mentioned as not being a Confederate because some of the family was Confederate. So this makes me wonder if we had both sides of the families on both sides of the Civil War. But regardless of that, because this was a family name and they were in the right area, I just made a note of who was there and those details. Then I have in my source citation of the research log, I have the page number that came from. So in the source citation, I add page 10. Now my next entry is from page 26, and this talks about how the Civil War battles caused great unrest in Southwest Missouri. So it's just a little snippet about what it would have been like for Nancy. And then I have another entry on page 42 with more information on the condition of the area from 1861 to 64. So I broke apart those pieces out of the book and cited the specific page number. And it was nice because I simply just copied and pasted that citation for each line of the record and changed only the page number. That's a really easy way to record a lot of information from a digitized book, or even if you're doing something like a tax list and all the information is the same for the citation except for the year. And every year to just change the year and the citation and then record the actual data. So the research log actually becomes such an easy way to keep track of all of these various searches.
Wow, that was a great rundown of all the parts of a research log. So, we get this question quite a bit. What is the difference between the timeline and the research log, and can they be combined? So, when we start the Research Like a Pro process, we talk about using a spreadsheet to make a timeline to gather all the information that you already know about your research objective. So, you're kind of building this spreadsheet, and then you build another spreadsheet for your research log. So, some people wonder, what's the difference between the two? Can we just combine them? So you can, or you can keep them separate. It's up to you. I'll tell you some ideas for both. The timeline is only for facts that you found in your research that you know tie to your ancestor. But your research log can include a lot of different results. It can include results for people with the same surname, negative results where you didn't find anything. It can include research for people in the fan club where you don't know how they're related to your research subject yet. And so your research log is a little bit more extensive, and your timeline is just kind of for your conclusions and for things that you know belong to your research subject. So that's kind of how I differentiate them in my mind. Another question that comes up is, do you go back and update your timeline as you go throughout your research and finish up your research plan? And the answer is yes. I do like to update my timelines because I like to have that as a resource for that ancestor going forward. So when I find something that belongs in the timeline for that ancestor, I will go ahead and just add it. Or sometimes I'll wait till the conclusion of my report writing phase and then I'll update my timeline. And that's also the time when I go and update my tree and my online trees and as well. Now, if you want to combine your timeline and your research log, you can do this. You just need to add a column for the year of the record to your research log, and then you can sort by the date. And then all of the negative results will go to the bottom, and all of the records that you found that had a date will go to the top, and then you'll be able to see them in chronological order. So it's up to you what you want to do. Hopefully, that helps you decide.
I think it's important to realize that you will get better at keeping your research log the more you try it, and you'll learn how you like to do it. So take all of our ideas, put them through the test, and then figure out a system that really works for you. So, what do you do with your research log when you've finished the research plan? You've gone through all of the different records that you wanted to search. Well, then you need to correlate everything that you've found and write the report, which is what we were talking at the beginning of this podcast about, bringing all the pieces together. And this is where your research log will be so valuable because you will have everything right in front of you and you can start to make connections. When you are writing, it is a wonderful thing to have those citations already created because as you're writing, you start getting into the flow of writing. And, I'm excited to write about what the county was like. And it's so great because I can cite that source, that county history, and the citation is right there in my research log ready for me. I can look at the information and write about it. If I need to quickly go back to the record to verify something, I've got the URL. It is my working document for writing up a report. It also helps you correlate the records and use the negative searches as perhaps negative evidence. So if you've been doing this run of tax records and you can see right in front of you that your ancestor was in the tax list for 10 years and then he disappears, the lights go on in your head and you realize, oh, okay, he died or he moved. What happened? And it helps you to analyze that, correlate that with other information you've discovered. And it's all right there in your research log for you to see. Think of your research log as the pieces of the puzzle, and then your research report putting those pieces of the puzzle together.
Great. So, I was talking about this at the beginning of the episode that sometimes it feels scattered before you write it up. One way to prevent that is to put all of your findings in the same research log or the same place. When you do that, you feel like you're ready to start writing because you have everything that you've found all together and you can add it to your narrative as you go. And you can just go entry by entry and start to put that into an outline. I really like to build an outline sometimes when you are feeling like you have a lot of scattered information. And another way to do it is just to sort your research log by locality or sort it by date, and then it doesn't feel as scattered anymore. So another thing that you might want to try using are software programs that help you with research logs. And one of them we've talked about before in a previous episode on Research Like a Pro, and that was on episode 90. If you want to listen to that, and it's about Goldie May, a family search research log and assistant that our friend Richard Miller built. And it's basically just an automated way to track the websites that you're looking at, and it helps you by starting with an objective. And you go to family search and you just choose somebody in your tree, and then it builds some objective choices, and then it builds a research log for you just based on where you're clicking, and it just keeps track of all these websites for you automatically. If you're not keeping a research log, this could be a good place for you to start. It gives you some of the benefits, not all of them, but it gives you some of them. You can build your citation by adding a note to each item. To get the full benefit of using a research log, we really suggest using a spreadsheet or somewhere where you can write out more detailed notes. But this is something that's better than nothing. And then Research Ties is another program that allows you to create research logs. And this works really well if you have one source that you're extracting a lot of details and a lot of results from. And so you build a citation for that source, and then you start logging all of the results that you find. So we'll link to those in the show notes, and you can try them out if that's something that interests you.
All right, great. I love talking about research logs. I've said this before, but I'm just going to say it again. I don't feel like I'm doing real research unless I have my research log open and I am recording my searches. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just surfing and playing and not being productive. So try it out. See if you have the same experience. Once you learn how to use research logs, I think you'll never want to go back to just chasing bright, shiny objects.
And my final tip for research logs is when you are researching and you have an idea to look something up, just kind of background information and context, and you look at a Wikipedia article or you look at a historical article and think, I'm just doing this so that I understand, and you don't think to log it, well, I suggest that you always log that, because when you're writing your report, you're probably going to want to use that information that you learned, and it would be good to include a citation to where you learned that from, because it might not be common knowledge, and when things are not common knowledge, it's best to have a source citation for that. So even if you're not sure if you will need that piece of information, if you looked it up and you wanted to know, you're probably going to want to remember where you found it. So just log it anyway.
Yeah, we hear a lot of people that are writing their research report for the first time, and that is one of the common things that they talk about, is that they wish they would have logged all of those little searches that they didn't think that they'd need, and then they have to go do it again to put it in the report. Good idea, Nicole.
All right, everybody. We hope you are having fun revisiting the Research Like a Pro process with us. Next week, we will talk about research reports. So we will talk to you then.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your research. If you want to learn more, purchase our book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist Guide, on Amazon.com and other booksellers. You can also register for our Research Like a Pro online course or join our next study group. Learn more at FamilyLocket.com. To share your progress and ask questions, join our private Facebook group by sending us your book receipt or joining our e-course or study group. If you like what you heard and would like to support this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.